Begin in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the United Nations has condemned attacks against its personnel in Kinshasa by unknown assailants. It's reported that crowds of people on motorbikes gathered in the Riverside Gombe district, burning tires and attacking people. The head of MONUSCO says a number of the mission's vehicles were torched on Saturday. The Côte d'Ivoire embassy also said one of its vehicles had been vandalized in the attack. The Congolese government is yet to issue a statement on the incident. The UN has now called on authorities to launch investigations. Let's bring in our correspondent, Chris Ochemringa, who joins us live from Kinshasa. Chris, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us here on Africa Live. What more can you tell us about the attacks on UN staff in Kinshasa? And what's driving these attacks, Chris?
Well, so Richard, first of all, these attacks have been happening since last week. They were happening outside foreign embassies like the US, UK and France. And they haven't been so big. A few people, holding placards denouncing the conflict in the east of the country and condemning these embassies for their silence, not taking stern action to stop the people who were supporting the M23 rebels from continuing, gaining more territory in the east. But it's on Saturday that we saw the biggest protest so far. A number of people, like you mentioned, who are on motorbikes, people believed to be from supporters of President Felix Tshisekedi's party, political party, the UDPS, gathered outside some of these embassies, burning tires, and we also saw some of them burning UN vehicles. They accosted some UN personnel, and the police officers came in later, fired some shots to disperse them. But, there's a general sense of nationalism, patriotism that has been whipped up across the DRC because of the conflict in the east. Many Congolese people believe that the international community is not doing enough to condemn specifically Rwanda, which they accuse of supporting the M23 rebels. Now, over the past couple of weeks, we have seen statements being issued by the Embassy of the United States, UK and France, condemning the ongoing conflict and urging, the warring parties to hold dialogue. Now, that is a very sticky issue because the president of the DRC, Felix Tshisekedi, has said it repeatedly that he's not ready to have any dialogue with the M23 rebels because he believes that this is a group of terrorists that is being backed by Rwanda. He said he can only consider having any talks if Rwanda decides to withdraw its forces from DRC territory. So many Congolese people, the protesters, believe that these foreign envoys are calling for dialogue, something that is against what their president says. And, they're saying it's their country that has been attacked. They are drawing comparisons to what's happening in Ukraine. They're saying the international community has all come together to offer Ukraine arms and weapons, to fight against Russia, but that hasn't happened in their country. And so that is what really triggered these protests against some of the UN peacekeepers and these foreign envoys. Richard?
Chris, how is the DRC government responding to these attacks?
So there was a meeting held by the Interior Minister and some other government officials and army officers last night, and they decided, they issued a statement after this meeting. They said they condemned the attack on the UN personnel and the foreign embassies, and they said that they are going to strengthen the security around all these areas. They warned the Congolese protesters against continuing this. They will face stern action. They said this is against international law. Some of these foreign diplomats enjoy immunity, and it's wrong for them to attack them. And they also said that these people are allowed to continue holding protests, but they should do it in accordance with the DRC law. So that is the position of the government. They are saying it's very unfortunate what happened, and we're waiting to see what will happen, because we heard from some of these protesters that they will continue taking to the streets until these foreign envoys who are regarded as enemies of the DRC leave their country. Richard?
All right, Chris, thank you so much for staying on top of this story for us. I'd like you to hang in there. We'll come right back to you with a few more questions. But let's move on. Still in the DRC, aid organizations are worried about the escalating violence in the eastern region. Ongoing clashes between the M23 rebels and pro-government forces have intensified, displacing many people from their homes. According to humanitarian organizations, at least 150,000 people, more than half of them children, have been displaced since February. Recent attacks in Sake town, about 20 kilometers from Goma, claimed the lives of at least 6 people, with several others injured. Other clashes were also reported north of Goma in Nyiragongo territory. Government officials say they're working to ease the situation.
La population, qu'elle puisse être sereine, le chef de l'État ne dort pas.
The head of state doesn't sleep. The supreme commander doesn't sleep. Day and night, he's monitoring the situation here. And as I told you, everything is being done by our armed forces to ensure that Sake and Goma are protected, and that all the territories belonging to the DRC, Rutshuru and Masisi can be liberated. It's a message of comfort and support, also to our armed forces, to our friends from other forces who are here, the SADC, the private companies who are here, our Zalendo brothers who are also fighting and whom we congratulate for the defense of our territory. It has also enabled us to see the war wounded and to support the bereaved families, more than 12 of whom are now in mourning.
Again, Chris, thank you so much for standing by. One more question before we let you go. Chris, what's the latest, though, on the escalating violence in the eastern parts of Goma?
Yes, Richard, I spoke to a journalist who's following this conflict very closely in Goma, and he said that there was fighting in the town of Sake, which is about 23 kilometers from the eastern city of Goma. And he said the fighting was very intense. He said there were some bombs that landed in Sake and injuring 3 people. And so there is a lot of fear, panic in that city, that town. Many people are fleeing towards Goma, and like you mentioned earlier, the humanitarian organizations are very concerned about, the escalating violence. More than 150,000 people have fled to areas. Some of these areas are overwhelmed, like there's a hospital in Mweso, where health workers have been saying they have received so many wounded people and people seeking refuge. So there is a lot of fear that this conflict will really deteriorate further and cause more deaths in Goma.